Once, in the dark days of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, there lived a young girl named Francesca. Fate was not kind to her, for of all the times in which to be born, she was born in Spain during the misery of the Inquisition. It was an age of great evil and persecution. For years, Jews who observed their holidays or sought God in prayer or endeavored to teach their children the heritage of their ancestors were imprisoned and often executed upon a burning stake. In August of 1492, Francesca had stood upon the dock and watched as the great Christopher Columbus set sail for the New World. She had longed to go with him and escape her life of suffering. She prayed for someone to rescue her and all the other secret Jews. Perhaps she thought in the New World things were different. Could it be that the New World was really God's Garden of Eden, a paradise where there were no inquisitors and where people loved one another? Francesca had remained on the dock long after the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria had left the harbor. She watched each of the ships sail out to sea and slowly disappear into the horizon. Even when she could no longer see the huge white sails filled with the ocean breeze, she continued to gaze out over the blue waters. Now it was winter. Kislev had come to the world. Francesca and her family knew it was time for Hanukkah, but they also knew that if they were caught lighting the Chanukah, they could be imprisoned or worse. One night, toward the very end of the month of Kislev, Francesca lay asleep in her bed. A brilliant moon visited the world that night, and 3 stars appeared in the sky above the town. A breeze stirred and softly tapped at the shutters to Francesca's window. Gently it loosened the latch, and the shutters swung open. The breeze floated through the room and stroked her hair, her face, with its cool touch. It beckoned to her to ride its invisible wave to lands far away. Francesca was not sure she wished to embark on such a nocturnal journey, but the breeze was persistent, and finally she agreed. Up she rose and floated out the window. For just a moment she hovered over the town, marveling at the stillness in the streets. All the houses were dark. No one moved. Cats called to one another. Nightbirds sang their quiet songs. Then, in an instant, Francesca found herself soaring through the skies. She flew over towns, over tall mountains, and through wide valleys. As she passed one of the mountaintops, she reached down to scoop up some snow from the peak. On she traveled on the back of the wind. How free she felt. She soared like a bird. For half the night she flew. Then finally the wind began to calm down, and Francesca floated softly down to earth. She landed just outside the mouth of a deep, dark cave. Gently the breeze pushed Francesca inside the cave. For several moments she could not see at all. It was as black as the blackest of nights, but somehow she did not bump into anything, even once. After a while, she came to a room deep inside the cave. In the middle of the room there was a fire burning, and around the fire, sitting on thrones, were 5 figures dressed in robes, their faces hidden from view by their hoods. "Francesca, the breeze has brought you to us," said one of the figures. "We have heard your prayers," said another. "We have a gift for you," said a third. Then they each removed their hoods. The glow of the fire filled their eyes, and even though it was very dark in the cave, it was easy to see each of the 5 men. Francesca was astonished. "I am Judah Maccabee," said the first man. "Next to me sit my 4 brothers. God has given us the task of tending this fire. It is a special flame kindled by a spark from the divine throne. It is the light of God. Those who are comforted by its warmth find courage and hope." Francesca gazed at the crackling flame. She could feel its warmth. "When we first began our struggle against the tyrant Antiochus," said Judah, "we hid from his soldiers in caves. One night, after a battle, we sat in a cave nursing all our comrades who had been wounded in the day's fighting. It It was cold in the cave and dark. No matter how we tried, we could not keep the wind from putting out our fire. That night, for the first and only time, I wondered if we could actually prevail. Could we defeat the most powerful army in the world? Then I remembered the words from the Torah, Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai. Who is like our God among all of the false gods of the other nations? Those words gave me hope and courage. They gave me strength. I knew at that moment that if we believed in the power of Adonai, our God, we would win. Suddenly, our sputtering flame rose and roared. No matter how hard the wind blew that night, the flame continued to burn. The fire was so bright and warm, it made us all feel brave. After that night, we never were fearful again. The next day, we defeated Antiochus' army and recaptured the temple. Judah stopped speaking and walked toward Francesca. He placed his hands on her shoulders and looked deeply into her eyes. We know that you and your family cannot kindle the lights of Hanukkah this year. Do not be sad and do not despair. Turn to the flames, Francesca, and study them well. Francesca watched the flames rise and fall. She studied every part of their dance. She memorized the reds, orange, yellows, whites, and blues that appeared in the fire. She followed every spark that flew out and disappeared into the dark night. Now close your eyes, whispered Judah. Can you still see the flame in your mind? Francesca nodded her head. She did not dare speak for fear that her voice would shatter the magic of the moment. God's light will always be with you. When you are frightened or sick at heart, all you need to do is close your eyes and find God's light. Tonight is the fourth night of Hanukkah. When you are alone in your room and 3 stars have appeared in the sky, close your eyes and find the lights of God's fire. Feel its warmth. Feel your courage. Then imagine that you have your family's Chanukah before you. Take hold of the shamash and thrust it into God's fire. Use this flame to light the 4 candles in your Chanukah. That is your secret. No one can ever take this flame from you. It will always be there for you whenever you need hope or courage. A gust of wind blew through the shutters and lifted the covers from Francesca's sleeping body and awakened her. She shivered. She was no longer in the cave with the Maccabees. Here she was back in her bed. Had she been dreaming? The moon was shining and spreading its soft white glow over the surface of the street outside. Stars twinkled and sparkled. Then she remembered about the flame. She closed her eyes, and the flame appeared just as Judah said it would. She imagined her family's Chanukah with the shamash in its place and 4 other candles standing tall, awaiting their kindling flame. Francesca used the flame to kindle her Chanukah. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the stars once more. What if her evening adventure had really been a dream? No matter, she thought. God's light is very real. This Hanukkah, she knew she had been given a secret gift, one that she would keep forever.